Welcome to today's deep dive. We're tackling a topic suggested by you, our listeners, the chemistry of wine. From the vineyard all the way to the glass, I'm excited to, swirl, sniff, and sip our way through the science that makes wine so fascinating.
You picked a great one. I was really intrigued when I saw your request, blending organic chemistry, a little bit of microbiology, and even a touch of physics in there. Who knew there are so many scientific reactions happening in every bottle, huh?
Right. It's amazing. So to guide our tasting journey, we'll be hitting 5 key areas.
Okay.
First up, the chemistry, like how those sugars in grapes transform to alcohol during fermentation.
The basics.
Exactly. Then we'll dive into the world of yeast, those tiny microbes making it all happen. Next, tannins, that dryness you feel in some wines. How's it connected to aging? Then we get to the good stuff, the aromas,
Ah,
the
yes.
role of esters in creating those fruity and floral notes we love. And finally, we'll uncover how aging reactions lead to those complex changes that give wines their unique character over time.
It's like a symphony, a chemical symphony where each element plays a crucial role in the final masterpiece.
I love that analogy. Okay, so let's kick things off with the basics. We all know wine is made from grapes. But what's really happening chemically when we talk about fermentation? Is it as simple as grape juice becoming alcohol?
Well, it's more intricate, but you're on the right track. It all starts with the sugar in those grapes, primarily glucose and fructose.
Okay.
During fermentation, yeast converts those sugars into, well, ethanol, the alcohol we love, and carbon dioxide. You know those bubbles that tickle your nose in sparkling
Oh,
wine?
yeah.
That's the CO2 from the yeast, basically having a metabolic party.
So those bubbles are a byproduct of yeast having a sugar feast. Incredible. But how do these tiny microbes actually drive alcoholic fermentation? Seems complex for something so small.
It's definitely complex and fascinating. Yeast cells contain these enzymes that act like catalysts, speeding up the chemical reactions involved in breaking down that sugar and producing the alcohol. And here's the amazing part. Different strains of yeast have different metabolic pathways, leading to variations in the types and amounts of alcohol, esters, and other compounds produced.
So that's why even wines made from the same grape can taste so different, all because of these microscopic differences in yeast.
Precisely. The yeast strain, along with things like temperature and sugar levels, are like a conductor leading this orchestra of flavor development in the wine.
Okay, starting to see how important yeast is to this whole process. Now, I always hear people talking about tannins, especially in red wines. I know they're responsible for that dry feeling, but not sure what they are or where they come from.
Great question. Tannins are polyphenols, naturally occurring compounds found in grape skins, seeds, and stems. Think of them as tiny molecules with lots of grabby arms that can bind to proteins in your saliva, creating that astringent, puckering sensation we call dryness.
So, more tannins, drier wine.
Generally, yes. And here's where it gets interesting. Tannins also play a crucial role in a wine's aging potential. They act like antioxidants, protecting the wine from oxidation and helping it develop those complex flavors over time.
Hold on, antioxidants in wine. So, a glass of Cabernet might be doing more than just tasting good.
Potentially. But we'll delve into the health aspect a bit later. For now, let's stick with the fascinating chemistry in our glasses.
Right, back to the science. Okay, so we covered fermentation basics and how tannins impact a wine's structure and mouthfeel. Now let's move on to my favorite part, the aromas. When I sniff a glass, I get all sorts of fruity, floral, sometimes even spicy notes. What creates that?
That's where esters come in. Volatile aroma compounds created during fermentation, primarily through reactions between alcohols and acids produced by, you guessed it, yeast. They're responsible for a huge range of aromas: apple, pear, citrus to honey, rose, even violet.
It's like the yeast is a chef meticulously balancing all these flavors. The esters are their secret ingredients. But with so many aromas possible, how does the yeast decide which esters to make?
Well, it's not a conscious decision, of course. The types of esters produced depend on a few things: the grape variety itself, the specific yeast strain, the temperature of fermentation, even the oxygen levels. Winemakers carefully control these variables to achieve the aroma profile they want for a particular wine.
It really is this delicate dance between science and art, starting to understand how many factors contribute to what ends up in our glass.
It's remarkable, isn't it? And we've only just scratched the surface. There's a whole world of fascinating chemistry waiting as we delve into the aging process and the compounds that give wines their unique personalities.
This is all incredibly interesting. Before we move on, is there anything from this first part of our deep dive that stands out to you?
It's the realization that something as simple as a glass of wine is this complex interplay of reactions orchestrated by a microscopic organism, the power and elegance of nature's chemistry.
I couldn't agree with that. Now, I don't know about you, but all this talk about wine is making me thirsty.
Me too. Let's take a quick break to refresh our palates, and then we'll be right back to explore those chemical compounds that give wines their unique personalities. Welcome back to our deep dive into wine chemistry.
Before we took a moment to swirl and sniff, we were talking about those tiny yeasts creating all the aromas in wine.
Yes, and now we're going to unpack the specific compounds that give different wines their personalities, like meeting the characters behind the scenes.
I love that. Could we start with red wines? I've always been fascinated by their bold flavors and how they evolve over time. Are there specific compounds responsible for those characteristics?
Absolutely. One key player in red wines is a compound called resveratrol. It's a polyphenol found in grape skins, and it's a powerful antioxidant.
Wait, you're telling me my glass of Cabernet might be doing more than staining my teeth? I've heard about the health benefits of resveratrol, but I never connected it to wine.
You got it. Resveratrol has been linked to various health benefits, including reducing inflammation, protecting against heart disease. Of course, more research is needed and moderation is a key.
Always good advice. So resveratrol contributes to the flavor and the potential health benefits of red wine. Amazing. What about white wines? Are there any standout compounds that give them their crispness and refreshing qualities?
One compound that plays a big role in white wines is malic acid. You know how green apples have that tart, tangy taste? That's malic acid. It's naturally present in grapes, and winemakers can actually adjust its levels during fermentation.
So if I'm tasting a particularly tart Sauvignon Blanc, that's likely due to higher levels of malic acid.
Exactly. Some winemakers actually use a process called malolactic fermentation. They introduce bacteria that convert malic acid into lactic acid. It has a softer, creamier taste.
So that explains why some white wines have a buttery texture. It all comes back to these chemical conversions during fermentation.
Precisely. And speaking of transformations, let's not forget oak aging. Many wines, red and white, spend time in oak barrels. This adds a whole range of flavors and aromas.
Oh, I love those oaky notes, especially in a Chardonnay or Pinot Noir, what's happening in the barrels to create those flavors.
Oak wood contains compounds like vanillin, contributes to those vanilla notes, as you might guess, and eugenol, which adds spicy, clove-like aromas. The type of oak used, how the barrels are toasted, the duration of aging, all influence the final flavor.
So it's not just about the grapes and the yeast. The type of wood, how it's treated, also plays a role in shaping the wine's personality. Each step adds another layer of complexity.
You got it. And there's one more group of compounds we need to talk about. Can be a bit controversial, but they're crucial in winemaking. I'm talking about sulfur compounds.
Sulfur. Like rotten eggs. I don't know about that in my wine.
Don't worry, it's not quite like that. Some sulfur compounds, yeah, they can have unpleasant aromas if there's too much. But others, like thiols, can contribute those desirable aromas like grapefruit, passion fruit, or even those gunflint notes in some white wines.
Wow, so sulfur could be both good and bad in winemaking. All comes down to balance.
Absolutely. Winemakers carefully manage sulfur levels throughout the process, making sure they add those nice aromas, protect the wine, but don't create any off-putting smells.
Sounds like winemakers need to be chemistry masters to handle all these variables. Is there anything else about wine chemistry that you find particularly interesting?
One area that's really fascinating is the research on the human microbiome and how it influences our perception of flavor.
Wait, are you saying the bacteria in my gut affect how I taste wine? That's wild.
It seems that way. Everyone's microbiome is unique. It can influence how we metabolize different compounds in wine, potentially changing how we perceive those flavors and aromas.
So my experience of a particular wine might be different from someone else's because of the bacteria in my gut. Incredible. It adds another layer to the idea of taste being subjective.
Exactly. It's a reminder that even with something like wine, there are layers upon layers of complexity.
Feeling a little overwhelmed with all this information? Amazing how something I enjoy so casually involves so much science.
I know what you mean. It's like peeking behind the curtain and seeing the intricate workings that create the magic. Before we move on, anything stood out to you so far?
Honestly, everything has been fascinating. I'm particularly intrigued by how our own internal ecosystem can influence how we perceive wine. Makes me wonder, could we one day tailor winemaking to individual microbiomes?
That's a thought-provoking question. Opens up exciting possibilities for personalized wine recommendations, maybe even custom-crafted wines designed for each person's enjoyment. But for now, let's take another pause to let this information settle. When we come back, we'll explore how all these transformations make their way from the grape to your glass.
Back for our final pour in this exploration of wine chemistry.
Ready to trace that journey from grape to glass.
Absolutely, we've talked fermentation, tannins, esters, even the role of our own microbiomes. But how does all this science actually end up in that bottle we enjoy?
It's a pretty remarkable journey. It all starts in the vineyard. Those sun-drenched grapes, they're essentially tiny chemical factories powered by photosynthesis.
So even before crushing and fermenting, there's already chemistry happening inside the grapes.
Exactly. Sunlight provides the energy for grapes to convert water and carbon dioxide into sugars, acids, and all those compounds that'll shape the final wine.
And the environment plays a role too, right? We hear about terroir, that mix of soil, climate, and other environmental factors. How does that affect the grape's chemistry?
Terroir is crucial. Soil composition affects the minerals and nutrients the vines can access, while the climate, the sunlight, rainfall, temperature swings, all that impacts the grapes. It all shapes their chemical makeup, things like sugar content, acidity, and those aroma precursors.
So the journey to a great wine starts way before the winery. It's a partnership between nature and human intervention.
Exactly. Once those grapes are harvested, the winemaker steps in to guide a transformation from fruit to wine. And the first crucial step is crushing.
Crushing sounds a little harsh.
Might sound that way, but it's actually a gentle process, just breaking open the grape cells to release the juices, sugars, acids, and tannins.
So that's when the decision about skin contact happens. Red wines get color and tannins from more skin contact, while white wines usually have less, right?
You got it. The time and intensity of skin contact are controlled carefully to get the right color, tannins, and flavors. For reds, more skin contact means richer color, structure, and aging potential. Whites, on the other hand, are often pressed quickly after crushing to keep the tannins low and preserve the delicate aromas.
Fascinating how each decision shapes the final product. We talked about yeast and fermentation, but remind me how those fruity, floral aromas develop during that process.
Of course, remember esters. They form through reactions between alcohols and acids produced by the yeast during fermentation. Like a tiny perfume factory, different yeasts produce different esters, leading to all those varied aromas.
So the yeast is basically composing a symphony of aromas while it's busy making alcohol. And I imagine the winemaker has some control over this aromatic orchestra.
Absolutely. Fermentation temperature, the yeast strain chosen, even oxygen levels can impact those esters. Winemakers use their knowledge of chemistry and microbiology to fine-tune those variables and create the aroma profile they're aiming for.
What a dance between science and art. And then there's aging. What's happening chemically as a wine sits in those oak barrels or bottles?
Aging is where time and chemistry work their magic. Slow oxidation reactions happen, softening tannins, blending flavors, developing those complex aromas that people love. And oak aging adds its own set of flavors and aromas, making wine even richer.
So each bottle of aged wine is like a time capsule, capturing the evolution of flavors over time. Makes you appreciate that slow, deliberate process. Anything else about this grape-to-glass journey that stands out to you?
It's realizing that winemaking is really a testament to the connection between nature, science, and human skill. Every step from vineyard to winery involves this delicate balance of reactions, processes, and decisions. It all leads to the wine we enjoy.
Well said. And this deep dive has given me a whole new appreciation for what's in my glass. Knowing all the science and transformations makes each sip even more special.
Absolutely. And it makes you think, doesn't it? Knowing that the liver has its own rhythm and processes things differently throughout the day, could drinking wine at different times actually change its taste or how it affects us? Something to consider, maybe even experiment with.
Fascinating thought. I'll be paying attention to how my wine tastes at different times now. Thank you so much for taking us on this incredible deep dive into wine chemistry. It's been a pleasure.
The pleasure was all mine. And remember, if you have a topic I'd like us to deep dive into, we're all ears. Keep those suggestions coming. Until next time, I ADR.